Vibrational astrologer Michael Spremulli is back with the Cosmic Weather Report for August 2024. Welcome to Evolving Humans, the podcast for awakening souls. I'm your host, Julia Marie. Settle in and get ready for another spirited conversation. Vibrational astrology is a research-based and scientifically validated system of astrology, and Michael has years of study and experience with it. He's a natural teacher, too, so you're going to learn a lot. July's been quite a ride. Let's hear what August is going to send our way. Welcome back, Michael.
Hello, Julia Marie. Thanks again for having me. Always great to be here.
You know, before we launch into what you have in store, and you've given me a heads up, it's jam-packed, I just want to talk a little bit about this Mars-Uranus conjunction. I noticed that there was a cluster of passing of celebrities. There were 3 of them, but they were very close in time. We had Alec Baldwin's Rust case that suddenly was dismissed with prejudice due to prosecutor gross misconduct. Then we had the ear event on Saturday, and then a week later, the other party's candidate drops out of the race.
Yeah.
How long is this Mars-Uranus conjunction lasting, and do you have any thoughts on what's happened so far?
So you bring up a lot of interesting components here. So the Mars-Uranus conjunction, and I don't have the exact date as to when that happened. It was a couple of weeks ago, I believe.
I think it was the 14th.
That sounds about right.
14th or 15th.
So Mars and Uranus by themselves do not necessarily indicate upheaval, disruption, the whole 9 yards, although it can. So let me just give a little thumbnail description of what that Mars-Uranus conjunction's all about. And then what I'd like to do is explain some of the most recent events. So Mars, of course, is the planet of action. Whenever Mars is present, things happen because Mars makes something happen as opposed to just, life moving along at a nice, smooth pace. Now, Uranus, its energy is about breaking out of the norm. So things that may be a little unusual happen during Mars-Uranus conjunctions because Uranus focuses us on the current moment. We are in the moment now, not worried about the past, not worried about the future. So when the 2 of them pair up, and they went conjunct in the sign of Taurus. So Taurus is about this natural unfolding of things, where things kind of just take their own course. The energy of Taurus is, let's not force it. Let's just see what happens. So when we interpret things from a VA perspective, we got to look at all the elements, the energy from Mars as well as the Mars-Uranus conjunction. So without a doubt, it can bring some disruptions, people dropping out of races, notable celebrity passings, those types of things. And it can appear to be kind of crazy and wild. Here's the deal, though. It doesn't mean total disarray for everyone in their own personal life, although it can have some bumpy knocks along the way. The good news about Mars-Uranus is that it could shake things up and head us in a different direction. Because Uranus breaks us out of that routine. So if someone's been stagnant in, let's say, a job or a relationship or where they're living or whatever, or as I like to say, because the content isn't nearly as important as the context. That Uranus-Mars energy could give them a little shot to say, all right, well, maybe it's time for you to make a change. Now, on a collective level, because remember, transits are interpreted differently if we're looking at them from the collective at large versus interacting with our own natal charts. In fact, now's a good time for me to give my standard disclaimer. This is like a weather report when we're doing transits for the collective. Your mileage will always vary depending on what's going on in your natal chart. So let me ask you a question, Julia Marie. What has your experience been under this Mars-Uranus conjunction? Has it been positive, negative, or uneventful? And there's no right answer.
I'm going to say that all of the stuff that would have fit Mars-Uranus conjunction happened last month for me. So
okay.
It's been more uneventful, I would say.
Yeah. So now we can go to someone else who might have, and I'd have to look at your chart to see how this conjunction was hitting various aspects of your chart. But you can get someone else who might report. And when you're seeing clients, because I've had a lot of this lately, where people are saying, oh my goodness, everything's upside down. And we look to see that Mars-Uranus conjunction might be hitting one of the angles. In an astrology chart, the angles are the ascendant, the midheaven, the descendant, or the bottom of the chart, the MC, no, the IC, excuse me, which is the bottom, the opposite the midheaven. Those folks can report a whole lot of activity going on because a circuit gets completed and it tends to light things up, literally and figuratively. The good or bad news, depending on how this has been impacting you, is, and you're right, I pulled up my the chart here, on the 14th is when it looks like it went, when the two of them were exactly conjunct. That is already weakening. So there's still some energy between Mars and Uranus connected as of today. At the time of this recording, we're hanging out where there's still some connectivity there, but it's not nearly as strong as it was. When that dissipates completely and that Mars-Uranus conjunction is kind of no more, I would say you're looking at within another week or so, it'll pretty much be gone and outside of the area of orb. And certainly by the time this podcast airs on August 1st or thereabouts, there's enough separation between the two that Mars-Uranus energy has now dissipated because the planets are moving in the space and the aspect distance is beyond the point where it would end up making any type of noticeable impact. So for those who've had it a little rocky, the good news is it's coming to an end. For those who might not have had much of a reaction or maybe a positive reaction, it's also coming to an end. So energy is energy, as you know, and it just gets manifested differently depending on what receivers we have within our chart. So from the collective experience, all the events that you mentioned seem to fit that whole pattern of Mars-Uranus. Now, let me speak a little bit about, and I don't normally do politics. That's not my thing, and I'm not going to get into it here, but it's noteworthy enough. I'm going to kind of dip my toe in the water with relation to Joe Biden deciding to drop out of the race. And he announced that on Sunday, July 21st. Now, what I found to be incredibly interesting about that is on Sunday, July 21st at 6:16 a.m., the moon was full in Capricorn. And here's why this is interesting. And I'll come up for air and let you ask questions in a second, but this ties in beautifully to the first thing I wanted to chat with you about. This was the second full moon in Capricorn we had this year. We had one in June 21st was a full moon in Capricorn at the beginning of Capricorn, where at that point when we spoke, I said, it's time for us to get our act together, but we may not know what that act is. And when you have a second full moon in the same sign a month after, and in this case, the full moon, I don't have the degrees listed here. It was around 29, I think, degrees at Capricorn. I'd have to go and look. But it was toward the end of the sign. It was like you got a reprieve to say, hey, all right, if you didn't get your stuff done during this first Capricornian cycle, and Capricorn is about practicality and viewing things from a sense of detachment and doing what needs to be done, rolling up the sleeves, you're going to get another chance to do this at the end of July. And full moons in general are about releasing
Mm-hmm.
what no longer serves us. And here we have the President of the United States later that day, several hours just after the full moon peaked at 6:16. I think the announcement came out at 1:54 Eastern time that he said he's going to be stepping aside. And I was mentioning to some people, I said, isn't it kind of wild that this announcement got made this day, just a few hours after the full moon, because full moons are about completion. We reap what we sow. And this is where we either celebrate our efforts and then move on, or let go of what is no longer serving us. And because it's in Capricorn, there's this element of practicality there. So am I going to say that the full moon caused Biden to resign? No, I'm not going to say that. But I am going to say it is kind of interesting that the energy tracks with his actions as the full moon really hit its peak several hours ago. I found that to be quite interesting.
Yeah, I remember you talking about those two full moons, and that is very interesting and, in my opinion, not a coincidence, but
yeah. I would, some astrologers, this is what caused it. Well, it probably helped things along.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he dropped out 2 days ago or 4 days from then, whatever. But what could have happened, because up to that point it was, I'm staying in the race. Okay, great. Whether he had a moment of insight, epiphany, spirit touched, I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes there, but it came to a head, as things often do with full moons. And that's something for all of your listeners to keep in mind. When a full moon rolls around, and July 21st was the last one, and of course we'll speak about the new and full moons for August, it brings things to a head. Either projects come together or fall apart. Relationships can sometimes culminate and people end up, forming a relationship or getting married or taking it to the next step. Or it could be, you know what? This isn't working. Let's let go of it. That's the moon energy in general. Now, how that gets colored, of course, is going to depend on the sign that it's in, because that adds another layer of energy to the mix. So interesting couple of weeks indeed. By the way, Mars-Uranus conjunction. You've got all this meltdown with the airlines, which is happening right around this time.
Mm-hmm.
That could be partially attributed. A lot of people say, well, Mercury's not even retrograde. Well, hold off, because it's getting there in August, and we'll speak to that too. But Mars-Uranus at a collective level can create some type of wide disruption. And what have we seen? Airlines have got people sleeping in airports. I've seen video after video of people just lining the hallways and walking paths, sleeping in Atlanta because they've been there for multiple days. So, I'm an astrologer who is averse to creating panic. I know a lot of people seem to enjoy that. It's going to be horrible. Things can be a little bumpy at any point in time. This Mars-Uranus conjunction could serve as that disruptor to give you a bit of a reset, and it can also make things a little rocky. The good news is that's wrapping up, and we're on to other aspects.
Yeah, I normally don't follow the news. It was 2 days before I even learned of the ear event. So,
yep.
But then I started to pay attention. Let's see what's going on, especially when I knew about that conjunction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get it. It's time to move on. So let's do that, shall we?
All right.
Let's move on.
Let's jump into, I always like to cover the moons first. Let's talk about new moon. The new moon is happening August 4th, 12 degrees of Leo. So just as a refresh, as folks may come in and out of this podcast at different points in times, we just spoke about the full moon, which is a time for culmination, releasing of things that don't work, celebration of activities, what have you. New moons are when we plant our seeds. And then they grow 6 months later when the moon is full in that same sign. So we have a new moon, August 4th, 12 degrees of Leo. Well, Leo is the sign of individuality. It's not a guarantee that people are going to be gregarious or outgoing. It can mean that. But remember, I'm a vibrational astrologer, and we work from a slightly different set of rules that are governed by controlled scientific studies. What the data indicates for people who have a lot of Leo, it's not that they're going to be a screaming extrovert or want to be a rock star or on stage, but it means they approach the world through the lens of wanting to leave their own unique mark on things. It's not about taking center stage, but what is it that you're doing in life to navigate the universe so that you can leave your own mark on it? Here's an example that some people may have heard of. Jean Piaget, very famous child psychologist, pioneered a whole bunch of things in the world of child psychology. He's what we refer to as like a super Leo. I think there's 6 or 8 placements in his chart that are inside of Leo. So that area is getting lit up quite a bit. Well, one would think by using traditional definitions, oh, he was probably the center of attention and everybody flocked around him and he was magnetic. He was none of those things. He was a researcher. But what he did was look at things from a unique perspective and came up with some very critical child development theories that are still in use today. So I say all that so that as we're stepping into this Leo energy, this new moon on August 4th is about figuring out, what is your self-expression? How do you want to create things? How do you want to leave your mark on the world? And what are you going to do to plant those seeds? Maybe you're an author and you're in the process of, contemplating a book idea, and maybe you get started with that. Maybe you're a painter and you start doing your own type of expressive painting. It could be in the business world. It could show up anywhere. But the whole idea is this new moon in Leo gives us the opportunity to plant some seeds that will enable us to really embrace the idea of leaving our own mark and differentiating ourselves from the rest of the crowd. How that looks for you, I have no idea. But what I can tell you is now is the time to plant those seeds so that when the moon is full 6 months from now in the sign of Leo, you have something to show for it. So this is very cool. Now, Leo energy, as I said, can be sometimes magnetizing. People gravitate toward some Leos. It's not a blanket statement across the board, but this can be an excellent time to start getting your ducks in a row for anything that needs to be forward facing, where you want others to see you as unique as opposed to mundane and ordinary. So that happens August 4th. Very, very cool new moon. It just kind of gets us in a situation where we're able to strike out on our own, whatever that means for you. So every month we have a new moon and a full moon. Well, let's talk about the full moon now. Full moon is happening on August 19th at 27 degrees of Aquarius. So Aquarius in vibrational astrology is about the collective. Aquarians are focused on being sort of like a node in a network. Aquarian energy is, hey, we're all equal. We all have our place in the universe, and we all bring something unique to the table, and no one's more important than anyone else. You just think of the age of Aquarius, the song, from Hair going back to the 60s. And, now we're technically in the age of Aquarius with Pluto being in there, changing things, shaking up traditions, generational shifts, all those type of things. But what are you going to be releasing or culminating this Aquarius full moon? Well, you got to go back 6 months ago. What were you doing in February? Because that cycle continues. New moon, 6 months later, full moon. New moon, full moon. New moon, full moon. So you got to go back because the moon was new in February. And let me grab my reference sheet here, which is within arm's reach. It was in February 9th. So on or around that time, and we've been doing this podcast since then, hopefully you planted some seeds that would be related to connecting with the network, the global network of people, how that ends up serving the community and the world at large rather than serving ourselves is the type of energy that's there. So with the full moon happening now, that's hopefully ripened and come to completion. And it may be time for us to change the way we connect with the network. What is working? the groups and people and associations we hang out with, it's a time to ask ourselves, is this really working for us? And if it is, great, keep on moving. If it's not, it might be time to reevaluate, who are we connected with? Who do we align with? What are the organizations, beliefs, ideologies that I'm currently aligned with that might not be working for me any longer? And this is one of those things where people say, well, I don't know. How do I figure that out? Your higher self always knows. You know when it's time to leave the party. You might not be able to put it into words, but it may be time to move on and cut ties with certain groups, individuals, organizations, and potentially seek out a different group, organization, or individual to hang out with. Because in the full moon, we have to let go of what no longer serves us. So that's the full moon happening this August 19th. Again, 27 degrees of Aquarius. And I'll mention this for all the signs that I've referenced so far, which is Capricorn, of course, and Leo, and then Aquarius. If you know your astrology chart and you have a lot of placements in any of those areas, you're going to feel these events more frequently the more planets you have in those houses. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is exactly what I cover in a personal consultation. Shameless plug. Obviously, no pressure to get one, but we're able to look and see, all right, based on these cycles, what sections of a chart are going to get most activated, because some full moons come and go and we don't feel anything. Others come by and it feels like you got knocked in the teeth with a hammer. And that's based on the placements in our chart. All right. So any questions on moons, be they full or new?
Nope. I feel like you covered that pretty nicely.
All right. Well, let's get to everyone's favorite retrograding planet, Mercury.
Mhm.
It's time for another visit. Happens about 3 times a year. Mercury goes retrograde, means that from the Earth's perspective, it appears as if it's moving backwards in the sky. It does not literally move backwards, but it has to do with parallax and angles and a lot more technical stuff than we want to get into here. So what happens when any planet goes retrograde, including Mercury? It's a time to revisit the energy of that planet to see if we're maximizing it effectively and possibly making some adjustments if needed. So August 5th at 4 degrees Virgo, Mercury stations and then starts to move retrograde. So Mercury is the planet of communication, thoughts. It connects ideas, usually very quickly. And when a planet moves retrograde, it forces us to step back and say, well, what's going on here? Are things working or are they not working? Now, this one's happening inside of the sign of Virgo. And Virgo's whole mission is it wants to fix everything. Yes, it could be very particular and exact and precise and all those things. But Virgo has this ideal way of viewing the world. And when things don't go according to Virgo's plans, they're not happy because they're not able to do what they see as the ideal and bring it into life. So with this Mercury retrograde happening in Virgo, this is a time for us to re-examine how we communicate and connect information and then organize that information, because Virgo energy has a whole lot of organizational overtones. Depending on where and how many planets are in someone's chart with Virgo, there are some Virgos who are, they have everything timed out, including how long it takes them to brush their teeth every day. That's cool. I have very little Virgo in my chart, so that's not me. But when this retrograde rolls around, rather than fearing, disruption of communication, there may be some of that, traditional Mercury retrograde stuff, but it's really an opportunity if you choose to take it. And that is, look at how your information, ideas, and thoughts are currently structured and analyzed. Because this may be a time for you to redo or revamp some of your daily routines and or communication patterns. Things that may have worked may not be working now. Maybe time to reevaluate and restructure those things. So as this retrograde progresses through the middle of August, because it hangs out there until the 28th, as you get to sort of mid-August, it's focusing your attention on refining details and simplifying processes. Because it's one thing to be organized, but you can be over-organized. You can overdo anything. You can overdo your competitive nature. You can overdo your gregariousness. You can be over-organized. And I'll throw a reference out there that probably most of your listeners won't recognize, and that's Rube Goldberg. If you don't know who that is, look it up. In short, he was noted for making the simplest tasks the most complicated as possible. So this retrograde helps you figure out, where might I be wasting a little of this structural, organizational, fix-it type of energy, and how can I recalibrate that? Now, at the end of this cycle, Mercury ends up going direct in Leo. Now, we were just speaking about Leo as far as where the full moon, or the new moon rather, is going to be. So it's almost as if this Mercury retrograde, if you look at it and step back and look at the big story, it's like the retrograde comes in to help us figure out, all right, what do we got to cut loose here? What do we need to maybe organize a little more, maybe a little less, get rid of? And it's like it's prepping us to step into this Leo season so that we can leave our own mark on the world. So the idea is, as Mercury goes direct on August 28th at 21 degrees Leo, this is when we then implement the insights gained during the retrograde period and move forward with some new clarity and confidence. So, astrology is one of those things you can zoom in and take a snapshot and see what's happening in the here and now. But when you start to look at the cycles as they rev up, peak, and then wind down, it really does tell a story. So, as usual, I'm not worried about a Mercury retrograde. I tend not to worry about any retrogrades. It's good to be aware of it. But if used correctly, you're then able to maximize the gains that this retrograde can bring to the table. So here's some practical tips on just how to deal with the retrograde in general. Double check details. Make sure that you review all communication plans thoroughly, but not compulsively. Check out some old projects, especially things that may or may not currently align with where you're headed. You may be able to cut those loose. Patience is important during the retrograde period. It only lasts 3 weeks. It's not like we're dealing with this for eons. And then reflect and reassess. It is a time for re-examination. And if there was nothing else you remember from this retrograde segment, it's a time to re-examine. So do that, put it to work, and you can end up coming out with some insights that you didn't have before going in. So that's Mercury retrograde. Now, no forecast would be complete without a couple of vibrational forecasts, and these tend to run a little longer. What was interesting is I was pulling this, and I think this might have happened last month. Some months you get a cycle that'll last for 2, 3, even 4 weeks if slow-moving planets are involved. This month, as was last month, you've got there's a bunch of little things happening. And I tend not to talk about cycles that last for like a day, 2 days, because they're not going to have that much of an impact on your life. So there are 3 vibrations that are active. I'll go ahead and cover those now and let you know what's up. So first, we have the 63rd vibration. Now that sounds like, what? 63rd? Where does that even come from? Well, it's a multiple of lower vibrations, 7 and 9. That's all we need to know for this discussion. So what are we talking about, though, in the 63rd vibration? Because the planets serve the energy of the vibration, but the vibration has its own energy along with it. So the 63rd, it's a composite vibration of 9 times 7. So it combines the qualities of the 7th vibe and the 9th vibe. Well, the 7th vibe is about an internal, quiet focus, meaning there's a stillness that gets created where if we tap into it, we can end up getting some insights that we might otherwise have missed. Well, the ninth vibration has to deal with family and community and where you're connected. So when the ninth vibe is active, this makes us feel at home, literally and figuratively. It's the neighborhood you live in, the people you work with, the people you may worship with. So as the 63rd vibration is active, it's this combination of the 7th and the 9th. So this can emphasize a sense of responsibility toward your family and community, and possibly a renewal of commitment and loyalty to your extended family and groups that you belong to or with. It's often associated with traditions and fostering a sense of community and solidarity. So that's the vibration in and of itself. Well, what do we have going on in the vibration? It was a very interesting thing. This lasted a week, August 1st through the 7th, and we have planets kind of cycling in and out of the 63rd vibration. So the planets that will show up at any given point are Mercury, Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune. So, for a little while, you're going to have Mercury, Saturn, Uranus connected. Then you'll have Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And the idea is not to get fixated on the individual aspects, but here's the tone, because that's what we want to look for, right? We want to focus on the major tones of the energy that you can expect. So we'll start at the bottom and work our way up. Mercury regulates thoughts and ideas. So that's part of this. You might be reevaluating various thoughts, beliefs, things that you end up identifying with. Well, then we have Saturn. Saturn comes in and takes out anything that's unnecessary. So it may cut loose some of those thoughts, you realize, I've thought this way for a long time, but after further examination, that doesn't really work for me anymore. Uranus shows up and breaks us out of the norm and focuses us on the here and now. Similar to what we were discussing earlier, as far as maybe creating a little bit of upheaval. Well, because it's in this 63rd vibe, you might discover, causes, ideas, beliefs that I have been aligned with, they may need to go. They maybe don't serve me as much anymore. And then finally, we have Neptune, and this is not all at the same time. This kind of happens within a week, so I'm kind of putting it all in one bucket for the sake of simplicity. Neptune is what is magical for you. So when we're looking at Neptune related to the 63rd vibration, what is the ideal for you and your family? Maybe we need to spend a little quiet time figuring out, what do we want to do? Let's say you live in a city and the crime rate is increased from when you started living there. It may be time to contemplate a move. This is not the time to make the move, but to maybe start thinking about it. And that 7th vibration part of this 63rd combined vibration maybe send you off for you to think by yourself a little bit. We've been looking at where we've been living. It's been good up to this point, but it's just too dangerous to raise our kids. This is just one example of hundreds. But the idea is this energy is about reevaluating from the standpoint of, am I protecting and serving and being responsible to my family and community, and potentially making some adjustments or begin to think about making some adjustments. These type of trends and themes will most likely be present on some level for everyone through August 1st through August 7th. So that's the 63rd vibration. Now we move to the 4th vibration. And that happens from August 17th through the 21st. That's when it's active. Now, vibrations are just another fancy word for aspects. And anyone who knows even a little bit about astrology has heard about conjunctions, oppositions, squares, trines, etc. Well, the 4th vibration is basically a higher octave of the 2nd vibration. It's a doubling, basically. So the 2nd vibration would be an opposition, when one planet is 180 degrees from the other. And the terms hard and soft aspects are used. Hard for squares, and oppositions, conjunctions, trines, and sextiles tend to be more easier aspects by definition, but it's not quite that simple. A hard aspect only means this, that there is some action happening and there's usually some friction needed in order to create the action. An example that I go to all the time is think about starting a fire. The only way a fire gets started is through friction. Pieces of wood or flint or steel need to be rubbed together, create friction, releases the energy, and then it catches on your kindling. That's what we're talking about when we're looking at any type of, quote, hard aspect patterns, and the fourth vibration would fall into that. So during the 17th through the 21st, there's going to be an increase of this desire to want to do something because it is technically a hard aspect, and this is where the work gets done. Now, the planets that are involved in the fourth are Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. So Venus regulates our attraction to beauty, who or what we're attracted to. Jupiter expands things. Saturn takes out anything that's not essential. So during this time that the fourth vibration is active, listen carefully to people to learn what's important to them. Why do I say that? Because Jupiter and Venus, when they're together, and may as well throw Saturn in there too, it enables you to understand and ascertain someone else's needs and then use this information to help meet their needs and help make their life better. Another thing that often shows up when we have Venus, Jupiter, Saturn together is that it cuts down on waste, because Venus is about making things beautiful. Saturn is, let's cut it to the core. So when you have those two things together, and Jupiter expands things, so you can end up reducing waste of energy, time, resources, attention, effort, whatever it is, wherever waste might be occurring. This is a good time to kind of trim that back because the energy cooperates. So you're going with the flow as opposed to against it. But the overall theme from the fourth vibration, again, active August 17th through the 21st, is tune into others and then see how you can help them based on what's important to them. And this is especially true if you have people who you, quote, just can't understand. How many of us have those folks in our life where it's like, I don't get where they're coming from? This transit may bring some clarity with you being able to pick up on their motivators, their drivers, their beliefs, and then enable you to be of assistance wherever possible. All right. There's a bunch of other little ones, as I said, thrown in after the 21st up to the 26th, but here's the only other one that lasts for multiple days, enough for me to spend some time on it. The third vibration, aka a trine. Okay, so in vibrational astrology, the definitions of the aspects have got data behind them explaining what they represent. Recently, I'm talking within the past couple of months, the definition for a trine in VA has indicated that when trines are present, people strive for harmony. They have to make things fit in a way that it is this free-flowing creative energy. And when it's not free-flowing and it is more of a struggle, they're not happy. So August 26th through August 30th, third vibration is active. This is when the collective may experience a bit of this desire to make things flow easily. It's a need to harmonize. Now, again, I don't do politics, but I will mention it is kind of interesting that this kicks in shortly after, I believe, the Democratic convention. We'll see what that unfolds. I'm not making any predictions.
Yeah,
but,
it does. Yeah.
But I still haven't spoken about the planets that are involved. So, astrology is in layers. You can get information from just knowing that the 63rd, 4th, and 3rd vibrations are going to be active, and you can kind of keep an eyeball out to what to expect. We can get more specific when we include the planets. So we have Venus, Uranus, and Pluto. Well, by the official definitions of vibrational astrology, this is actually some very sexually charged energy. And because it's in the third vibration or in a trine, it flows very, very easily. So there's this need to harmonize and have this connection back and forth. So one of the ways this can show up is like crazy attraction to someone where it's almost like compulsive. Oh, this person's great. They seem to know everything that I know about life, and we're just on the same page. And this is where some people get into trouble from a relationship standpoint, because they feel this energy flowing so easily that they jump a little too quickly. So Venus, Uranus, Pluto can be very sensual and very sexual and have a lot of passion and intensity, but you might want to be careful not to jump too quickly into those situations, because that might not be what lies ahead of that. Yeah, it might be an in the moment type of thing, but it may not end up being something that is going to be sustainable over the long haul. Now, what if relationships aren't in the cards? Venus also rolls up under the creative umbrella. So artistic expression, whether you're a musician or a painter or a writer or an artist that works in different types of medium, there could be this compulsive, free-flowing energy where you get this urge to create like mad during this time. And it just flows naturally. So, energy is energy. It can get applied in a variety of different ways. So I'm trying to give you a variety of different elements as to how this can show up, still adhering to the core energetic definition that's driving everything. So this could be an awesome time for anyone in the creative fields to really lean into that. And you might come out with some pretty interesting results. As far as the harmonizing together, people are just going to feel like they want to be in the flow with something, a flow with other people, a flow with creating artwork. Third vibration is about harmony and flow. You just want to make sure that you're not betting the farm on it, because remember, this only lasts for 4 days. So it's sort of like the idea of, hey, I bought this at the store because it looked great. And then you get it home and it's like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I'm not nearly as excited as I was when I was shopping for it. Similar type of energy. So again, third vibration, active from the 26th through August 30th. And that's what's happening for the month of August.
Well, you weren't kidding. There was a lot to share. Yeah, there's a lot in here.
A lot going on.
Yep.
Mostly good stuff from my perspective. I think, a little disruption here and there, but, it's all about the work we put in. And if there's a final note I could leave your listeners with is, this is the energy. It's like a weather report. If you don't take advantage of a sunny day to go out and have a picnic and then decide 5 days later when it's raining to go out and have a picnic, you're going to get wet. So you got to use the energy to its maximum efficiency when it's happening to engage in tasks that complement and flow with that energy.
Well, and that was my whole point of, in the beginning, asking you to come on a regular basis, is to provide the listeners with that opportunity to take advantage by moving in a way that is harmonious with whatever's going on. So thank you for doing that. Now, before we close, please tell the listeners how to connect with you.
Absolutely. To learn more about my work, join my free online community, get my weekly astro updates, just visit BlueRidgeAstrology.com. That's BlueRidgeAstrology.com. All information's there. You can follow me on my socials. I do daily updates that are quick for the day on all the socials, and all that information can be found at the website, BlueRidgeAstrology.com.
Thank you once again, Michael, for your superlative report.
Thank you.
Well, that's our time for today. Thank you for continuing to support Evolving Humans. If you found value in this episode, please share it with 2 other people who might also benefit. You can now leave us a text message by clicking the link at the top of the show notes page. Go ahead. Do it now.